Columbus is said to have discovered the New World, even though he was not the first European to cross the Atlantic. The Vikings reached the New World in the year 1000. It began with Eric the Red, who was born in Norway in the 900s. Eric the Red came from Viking chieftains. He grew up in Iceland. He was banished from Iceland for taking the life of another human being. He sailed westward from Iceland and discovered a large island. He called it Greenland. He chose that name to make it sound more attractive to future settlers. Some people consider Greenland an island of North America. In that case, it was Eric the Red who was the first European to land in the New World. After exploring along the coast of Greenland, Eric sailed back to Iceland. He organized an expedition to settle the beautiful green new land. In 985, he returned to Greenland with 25 ships carrying people to start a permanent colony. Eric's wife was a Christian. She helped to build a Christian church in Greenland in the year 1000. Leif Erikson, Eric's son, grew up in Greenland. In 999, he visited Norway. Like his mother, he was a Christian, and King Olaf I sent him on a mission to Greenland. A storm blew Leif Erikson off course. His ship missed Greenland and instead landed along the North American coast. He called the new land Vinland. The exact location of Vinland is not known. It may have been Newfoundland or Labrador. Leif Erikson spent the winter of 1000 in Vinland, and then he sailed to Greenland. The colony and Christian community did survive on Greenland for 500 years. In the 1500s, the climate changed for the worse. Winters became severe, the ground froze, crops couldn't be planted. Eventually, the colony faded away. Those who didn't die sailed back to Iceland. Despite all of these voyages by the Vikings, Columbus is still said to have discovered America. A discovery in the scientific sense means to make information available to a wider audience. When a person makes a discovery but keeps it secret, then it's not a discovery at all. Columbus, not Leif Erikson, gets credit for discovering America in the scientific sense. Columbus understood the importance of his discovery, and he told others of it. It was the voyage of Columbus that opened the New World to further exploration. 11 years after the death of Columbus, a Portuguese navigator named Ferdinand Magellan sought to prove Columbus right after all. Ferdinand Magellan spent years in loyal service to Portugal. He kept waiting for his big chance. Other captains always seemed to get the better assignments. In 1517, Magellan left Portugal and offered to sail under the Spanish flag. "I can reach the Indies without going around Africa," he told them. "I'll sail around the Americas and keep on going." Spain and Portugal had been rivals for many years. To avoid conflict, the ships of the two countries were kept apart by a political agreement. Portugal stayed east of a certain line down the middle of the Atlantic, and Spain stayed west. Essentially, the two superpowers split the earth in half. The agreement cut Spain out of the race to India by way of Africa. Portugal could trade with the East Indies, but Spain couldn't. Spain had no choice but to continue its exploration of the New World and hope to discover riches there. Magellan's plan was simple: sail west to South America, then sail south until he found a way around it. In 1519, Magellan organized a fleet of 5 ships. He probed along the coast of South America for a way through. At 35 degrees south latitude, the latitude at which da Gama found his way around Africa, South America showed nothing but solid land. Magellan continued south. Finally, he came to a break in the land and entered it. He traveled through a passage that is today called the Strait of Magellan. Wind-whipped waves and wild storms threatened the fleet. As it turned out, the weather in the strait is seldom any better. The passage is one of the most difficult tests of navigating skill on Earth. Magellan and his ships spent 38 days working through the 360-mile strait. Later, other ships would spend 60 days or more feeling their way through the confusing channels. The Strait of Magellan opened onto a new ocean. In comparison to the terrible storms Magellan had just survived, the ocean seemed very peaceful indeed. He gave it the name Pacific, meaning peaceful. Magellan sailed into a vast and empty sea. For 98 days he sailed without sighting land, twice as long as it took to cross the Atlantic. It became clear that this body of water was the Earth's largest ocean. Magellan passed the point of no return. He simply didn't have enough supplies to retrace his route. Magellan had no choice but to sail on. The ships ran out of food and water. The men were reduced to eating the ox-hide fittings on the sails. Then, when all seemed lost, they reached Guam, an isolated and small island. There they took on provisions. The next land was the Philippines. There Magellan unwisely involved himself in a squabble between two native tribes. In the fighting, Magellan was killed. Magellan began his voyage with 5 ships. One ship ran aground and was wrecked while scouting the eastern coast of South America. The crew of another ship gave up the mission while in the Strait of Magellan. They overcame their captain and fled back to Spain with most of the food and supplies. By now, there were too few men to man the ships. One ship was taken apart and used to repair the others. The 2 remaining ships, the Victoria and the Trinidad, continued westward across the Indian Ocean. They reached Africa, sailed around it, and sailed on. Along the coast of Africa, the Portuguese captured the Trinidad. On September 8, 1522, a single ship, the Victoria, dropped anchor at home in Spain. Sebastian Delcano commanded the ship. He and his crew became the first to sail around the earth. They had proved the earth was a sphere, and a large one. It was a costly triumph. 5 ships and 280 men had set out on the 3-year voyage. Only one ship and 18 sick and half-starved men made it home. Sebastian Delcano summed it up. The Pacific Ocean is so vast that the mind of man could scarce grasp its magnitude. Spanish and Portuguese ships were equipped with crude navigating aids such as compasses, quadrants, and hourglasses. These were simply inadequate for the challenge before them. Longitude, for example, is very difficult to measure without an accurate clock. The difficulties of measuring longitude were so great that tiny islands in the vast Pacific were found, lost, and found again. Successful exploration demanded more than brave captains and crews. Sailors needed to understand the forces that put trade winds into motion and caused ocean currents. They needed to understand how the Earth's magnetic field caused a compass to point north. They needed accurate clocks and reliable tide tables. These tools of modern navigation would take more than 200 years to develop.